Thank you very much, Tom. I suppose it's interesting following Tracy and Brian, and I think to continue Tom's analogies, I was sitting there, I think that was the match. So I think you can decide how many goals were scored and by whom. But I'm not even going to try, and I was trying to think of an analogy, where would I fit, and short of being the GAA as SEAI, I thought I couldn't do any better. Anyway, what I'm going to talk about this morning is retrofit and energy affordability, and I suppose the broader retrofit. I'm going to talk put a little bit of the energy affordability into context, talk about government and SEAI responses, and then, in a sense, what we've learned over the next few years and what considerations that has for as we move forward to this sort of serious upscaling that we're all talking about today. So I suppose just very quickly, I think most people are probably familiar, but just what is energy affordability? And it's the inability to attain an acceptable standard of warmth in your home at an affordable cost. It's multidimensional. I mean, it depends on household income and priorities, and that's, where you've kind of older, you've got young families with different priorities. Clearly, energy and fuel cost impacts it, and then finally, the energy efficiency of the home clearly has an impact on the demand, and that, I suppose, is where SEAI particularly and the various schemes can address. The effects for vulnerable groups can be quite deep. I mean, in terms of quality of life, kind of comfort and warmth in the home, and people having to make decisions about do they live in one room that's warm, and I suppose the bigger one then is the health of the household, and over a long period of time, the impacts that has both on costs in the health service as well as demands. Government interventions are twofold for this. I mean, we've got on the one side, responses that address income deficits. So this is where the income is augmented for energy-related demands. That's things like fuel allowance, things like the household benefits package, where you've got electricity and gas units that are provided to homeowner. It's current in nature in terms of current spending, and it is a recurring demand. Now, on the other side, we have kind of addressing the energy efficiency of the home, and that's where a lot of it's structural in nature. It's what we do under the Warmer Homes scheme and deliver homes in that, and also local authority schemes. I suppose it's capital in nature and it's enduring. So once a house is addressed, it does reduce the demand, it improves the situation for the householder, and it's then enduring year on year. I know we keep talking about the retrofit, but I think it's no harm at every point to actually just revisit what it actually is, and I suppose the scale. I mean, ambitious. It really is step change in energy efficiency for all buildings, and I think that challenge cannot be underestimated. I mean, it has great opportunities, but there are huge challenges with it. In its design, its actions to foster and support innovation. I think the Minister talked this morning, and I think at every turn talks about innovation and the opportunities that is for our economy as we try and get back up off our knees. It's about growing market for energy-related goods and services, and Pat talked about that this morning as well. Clearly related employment growth, develop skill sets and standards in these markets, which is very important to build confidence. The financing solutions everybody is talking about, and that's really one of the key things that needs to be addressed. I suppose within the retrofit programme, there is a particular focus on the residential sector. So I suppose that's why we're particularly focusing on discussing that today, where 75% of the funds have been ring-fenced. And then the vulnerable fuel poor, are identified within that as a group that needs to be considered as the programme is rolled out. I suppose for SEAI, the responses, and we talk about the responses that are shared cost and the responses that are fully funded. And really the shared cost are where we're in what is the can-pay market. It's when people can afford to go out and do and avail of the offerings that Tracy and Brian have, or that a number of the contractors in the room have. So we have the Home Energy Savings Scheme, we have the Greener Homes Scheme. They're part-funded schemes. And our role in that is trying to make it easy for the consumer to act. We work very hard on that in terms of our systems processes and, for example, with the Home Energy Saving, our online application, which is very efficient. We then move to the fully funded, and this is where we need to fully fund some responses where people can't afford to do it themselves. So we have the Warmer Homes Scheme. This is an area where we must intervene to support. It's about direct service provision, so it's about where we use both community-based organisations and private contractors to deliver the service direct to the home, and it's about reducing the demand, and in that sense, assisting people out of, or addressing their vulnerability, assisting them out of fuel poverty. For those, I think most people are probably familiar with it, but I'm just going to skip through it quickly in terms of the Warmer Homes scheme. So really it's about energy efficiency improvements. You see there attic wall insulation, draft proofing, heating systems. The delivery is twofold. We have community-based organisations, a network of 25 of them delivering, and a private contractor panel of 20. Budget this year of 30 million. So it's very significant and has been growing exponentially really over the last 2 to 3 years. We're going to hit 25,000 homes this year, so I think that kind of summarises the challenge. Our role is about defining specifications, providing processes and systems, governance, and key is defining the quality assurance framework. And then what we outsource is the administration management and the inspection regime. Warmer Homes is a hybrid model. I think it started off being delivered by community-based organisations right back in 2000. Started off, the community-based worked well because it leveraged other schemes and social employment schemes, job initiative schemes over the years. There was one CBO in the year 2000, and we have a network now of 25 CBOs and growing, delivering that. They meet multiple policy goals in terms of regional development, jobs, training, so a whole range, so works well from that reason. And they also deliver services beyond Warmer Homes, so they're very embedded in the community, which is an advantage in terms of access to, I suppose, community and information on the ground. Private sector delivery started to expand in 2007, and in a sense the CBO model, in terms of getting to a point of national coverage, wasn't sustainable. I suppose the irony was at that point, one of the real challenges was recruiting people into the scheme and the unemployment levels that we have, and I suppose that one has clearly flipped the other direction now. So 2009, 2010, we're delivering national coverage. I think with the private, it's also getting depth of measures in the homes and a different skill set, and clearly then appointed through competitive tender. I think it's important to give a sense of the scale of just how much Warmer Homes has grown. We're talking about upscaling on retrofit, and this is what we've been doing over the last couple of years. I mean, the upscaling has been huge in terms of the figures there. So the average number of homes being delivered under the Warmer Homes scheme through CBOs between the years 2000 and 2005 was about 1,800 homes a year. You can see the growth up to, in 2009, we delivered over 16,000 homes, and then there was Brian's nearly 2,000 homes on top of that. 2010, we're going to deliver 25,000 homes. Now, it brings huge challenges, everything from specifications, how we respond, how we work with people, the governance, the quality. But that has been delivering over the last 2 years, and I suppose we've learned a lot, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. If we look at the light blue is what's going to happen between this and the end of the year, and that's really, we're going to be, under Warmer Homes, going to be delivering 500 homes a year. I was talking earlier to one of our private contractors, and I suppose the challenges that we're putting down to them and people that have been successful through that procurement in actually responding and being able to deliver what we need against the standards and the quality framework. But, you know, it is a prize that's there for all, really, in terms of what's happening. So that just gives you a sense of the growth over the last 2 years. This year alone, the Warmer Homes scheme, as I say, 25,000 homes. And the impacts of that, it's supporting 600 jobs, annual energy savings of 4 million, and that's having taken account of 60% of the saving, which is taken up by these vulnerable groups in comfort taking. So I suppose one of the things when we talk about Warmer Homes, it is an energy efficiency, but it's not an energy saving programme, because it's really about people being able to heat their home and take a lot of it in kind of increased comfort in the home. The emission targets, and by the end of this year, cumulatively on the scheme, we will have delivered 62,000 homes through the various networks on the delivery. I think just the key things really when we start looking at where do we go in retrofit, and a lot of these actually apply to the full market. There's particular sensitivities when we're dealing with the fuel poor, but actually the challenges are the same. I suppose building scale and depth. The Minister talked this morning about them achieving the programme of 100 million over 5 years when they came in 3 years ago. It's now 100 million a year. That's what we have on deployment programmes this year. Now that scale has happened and that has grown exponentially. And I suppose we've kind of learned a lot about that, and I think the challenges now, having got to the point where we are, I think on the depth, we need to go, it's kind of, I suppose building scale and depth, it's really about striking the balance. On the depth, and as we say, the Minister talked, and we've talked a good bit here about the financing options. And that's where, so one of the key things for the can-pay sector is the financing options. When we get to the can't-pay sector, I mean, there are different things that need to be, where the balance needs to be struck, because it is the cost of a deeper measure versus hitting a higher volume of shallower measures, because when you're dealing with that sector, it is out of the public purse that the funds is coming. So it's actually managing that tension, and that's one of the challenges, I think, in terms of as we go forward. Technical specifications and codes of practice. We've talked a good bit about that this morning, but it really can't. I suppose one of the things over the last couple of years that we have found is that as we move into the market and as you begin to do volume, the only way is if there are consistent frameworks. So it's about giving confidence in the market, I think improving quality in the market, and I think that has already happened, both in terms of the codes of practice. I think it was Tracy made reference to them in terms of the codes of practice that have been developed across those programmes, which I think both gives guidance to the industry and that we can leverage in terms of improving the quality, giving confidence in the market, and therefore making it more sustainable in the long term. So I think with the strategic intent to upscale, that's a really important element, that we do it and that we do it right. The BER as kind of an underpinning process. I think the Minister actually covered it very well this morning when he talked about, we'll go out and spend 10, 20,000 on the kitchen and bring people in and it's a badge of honour. And that it is actually moving. And I suppose that's where BER is now at a point where, the processes, the frameworks, the numbers of BER assessors, and the quality out there is there that it can actually underpin and move towards. So how do we make kind of energy efficiency both easy and sexy for people, that they kind of, that the BER rating and what you do. And I do think, I find personally myself in the last couple of years, it has become kind of, dinner table discussion where people are asking about BERs. And so I do think it is moving. But I think he really hit it well in terms of, the say status, the visibility, and a label for your house, so that it's in terms of helping to motivate people to go to retrofit. I think once we begin to look at the kind of the fuel poor then within that, or maybe vulnerable groups, there are a couple of things to cover. The specific challenges, and again, the Minister actually talked about it when he talked about it an estate in his own area, which are mixed developments. It's one thing to be where a local authority is looking after a full local authority estate or a private estate where you have people that can avail of home energy saving or any offerings that the utilities have and move themselves. But it's looking, how do you deal with mixed estates where you've got mixed levels of income, mixed levels of ability to pay, and the ownership structures are varied as well. So in that, we're working this year with a number of the local authorities in trying to look at how do we address that, and also pilots in estates like the one that the Minister was talking about, where we look at to roll it out nationally. How do we actually take the kind of the very structured offerings that we now have and deal with the mixed levels of people's ability to pay, so that it can actually happen and be leveraged at quite a serious level. So the mixed developments and the social housing is another one. And again, this year we're doing a lot of work with the Irish Council for Social Housing and with some of the larger housing associations, because it is actually looking, how do we cover the whole market and make sure that this happens? And I suppose then looking at the fuel poor and vulnerable groups within that. As I say, there are specific challenges when it comes to looking at kind of rolling it out on a wider level, and it's identifying the vulnerable groups. Now, this might sound like it should be easy, and I think it's easy enough. There's lots of definitional issues, but it is easy to come with figures of, this is the number or that's the number. But one of the real challenges is, how do you identify and how do you develop systems that you know where they are? So it's actually identifying where the specific fuel-poor households are and vulnerable households are, as opposed to, what the percentages are. And I think Brian has made reference to the work that we're doing with the interagency and interdepartmental with DCE&R, but it's a real cross-government problem or challenge, because it's, everything from our own department in DCE&R to Department of Social Protection to the Department of the Environment when it comes to local authorities and buildings. So it's one where there's going to have to be real a cross-government agreement and working through that. So that's, I suppose, one of the challenges on the National Energy Affordability Strategy, which is currently being developed and will be out certainly this side of Christmas. So I suppose, where does that leave us? And I think, to sum up, I've skipped through that, Tom, so I actually think you're going to have even extra time for questions. But I suppose, where does it leave us? I think, to use a much bandied phrase, it's much done, more to do. I think the opportunity is great, and everybody has talked about it, and I think the challenges are significant. I think in SEAI, we've been rolling out new and upscaled programmes. So there's a lot of the upscale has already happened, and I think the frameworks are there that will underpin it happening to an even larger degree, particularly in the last 2 or 3 years. You'll see that from the exponential numbers that we're talking about. And we have learned a lot in that, and I think that's something that we have that we can share with industry and work with all partners in terms of making it happen. I suppose we do need to be then particularly sensitive to groups that are vulnerable to fuel poor, and to particularly use energy efficiency where we can to address that vulnerability and to support them as the programme and as retrofit happens at a much wider and national scale. Thank you.